Hi, everyone. Jenny and I were talking about some of the horror stories that I have as a talent acquisition leader in spot checking job descriptions and the content that we put out into the. If you're a T leader or recruiting manager, you've probably encountered this as well. But how many times I've looked on our career site or on LinkedIn at some of our job postings and seen errors in them, some where we've created templates people will follow, like it'll say like cut this portion out, or salary transparency states and cities where the salary was missing from the job description, or the EEO statement, and just all sorts of wackiness that goes out into the world. When we think about the world that we're in today, from an LLM discoverability, how you position yourself and how important it is, that can be a big challenge. If you've encountered any of these things, then this episode of the Missing Manual is for you. So I'm Julia Levy, former talent acquisition leader for 25 or so years, and we've got.
I'm Cotie Kangas, or JCK for short, and I am the person who's doing applied AI building in the people ops and TA space. Also not TA space too, but that's the part that where I've grown up and the part that I love and the part we're going to be talking about today.
So Jenny had lunch with an industry friend of hers, and they were talking about this problem. And Jenny spun up something, a tool that I wish I had when I was in role last time and all the times, I feel like. But Jenny, why don't you talk a little bit about the problem and what you built? And I'm really excited about it because I think what you built was just a taste of what this could be.
So, for context, a friend and I went out for breakfast. We were sitting there talking about, I was explaining, here's what I'm doing now, which is essentially for deployed engineering. So, it's the person who sits in front of the problem, sits with the business, understands kind of the landscape of everything, and reverse engineers AI experiences or builds. And I found that I loved this work so much. And so he was saying the stuff that you're talking about doing is amazing, and it can really add like reimagining the intake process and like some of these big problems that we've historically had in the people ops space, right? It's all amazing. I'm not saying it's not, but the market's not necessarily ready for that. So how do we find something that's like people can see it, they know they have it, and more importantly, it's helping them with the map of how to get it right. And so throwing out some different ideas. And he goes, could you build an agent that would be able to take in my public job descriptions and tell me where we had errors? And I kind of looked at him and I was like, seriously? And he's like, yeah, seriously. I was like, it's such a little use case. You have a huge freaking team. There's no way it's that bad. Like, this is a big organization that all of you are aware of.
It's
And
that bad. It's that
I
bad.
I had no idea, Julia. And so he's like, no, 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 just go see if you can do it. And this person happens to be at Workday, and Workday is historically a really tough nut to crack. And so I went back, ended up taking the problem statement, trying to figure out a way to do this. And I built an agent that could take in the Workday job feed and could analyze for errors and could give the list of the errors with not only here's what's wrong, but here's a recommended fix. So like in this situation, one of the examples was like a product name was wrong, right? So it said, it says this, it should say this. So it said rec number, problem, solution. And it had all the listings. I did a cross section of their 1,100 jobs just to be able to show, because I'm trying to be better about just not going and building the thing, because I'm somebody who likes to go and build and ship. But also, so one of our good friends said, you got to find a customer who will pay for this stuff first. So anyways, gave him a cross section of the jobs. He took it to his leader. And, we went from a breakfast to the next day, we had an artifact from the agentic experience that essentially solved the thing. So again, the space between an idea and a solved problem has gotten so much dramatically smaller, right? But one of the cool things about this that I called Julia, because I'm geeking out about this because I think it's so much fun. But I had a leader who I worked with, Claire Giancola Belmares. Hi, Claire. Thank you for teaching me this. But she always said, when you have a lean team, you don't have the luxury of just doing symptom mitigation. You have to do issue mitigation too. And when we're looking at a lot of these errors that are often in jobs, a lot of the times they actually stem from a configuration issue. And so, for example, I found that a number of the roles tended to be in the same department. And it looked like it was a result of a config issue within Workday. And so not only, right, you don't want to just have symptom mitigation, but also issue mitigation. So the agent also was able to take an educated guess at some of these areas that you could fix once, right? The upstream problem that prevents the downstream issues, which I think is an important piece. But again, this is an example, right, of how we can deploy agents or AI to help us get these things right. I still was a little bit shocked seeing the level of errors that were here. And I was like, is this a bigger problem? So I was like, I'm going to point this at an Ashby customer. I'm going to point this at a greenhouse customer. I'm going to point this at an iCIMS customer. So it took, again, the same concept of being able to pull down, first off, pull down a company's specific job feed in the back end, being able to index the problems, being able to see, like, can essentially the agent do this, right? Because doing it for Workday is great, but ultimately it'd be good to be able to do this for other companies too. And sure enough, you weren't kidding. There are problems galore. And
It's
so then
prolific.
it's insane. And so then there was a post on LinkedIn actually that was about, it was from Jatine, and he said HR accidentally uploaded the director's cut. And it's a screenshot of a job that has the insights that were meant, like to Julia's point, the part you're supposed to delete from the posting got uploaded. And this has, I mean, my comment alone has like 6,000 views on it, which is where I was like, you'd be shocked how often this happens. I actually didn't know until I built an agent to be able to solve this. So, like, again, this is a use case that you, once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? It's something that we can literally hold in our hands and be able to do something to fix, to go from like concept to problem solved really quickly.
We judge candidates and job seekers if they have errors on their resume. You can bet they're judging employers when there's errors on their job postings. And as much as you can, through a system, fix things, most of us know that the job description gets turned into a job posting. A human is doing that, likely a recruiter, an HR person. There are spelling
Or a
errors in there.
marketing person. Yeah. Yep.
The compliance myths around salary transparency is one I've encountered. OFCCP is another one, and those risks.
PEOs. Yep.
Yep, those risks can cost your company a lot of money in a lawsuit, and you can bet that there's people out there that are looking for those opportunities to try and start a legal suit against an employer to get some sort of settlement for silly little errors that a human made because they forgot to, check a button or add something in. So whatever we can do to have audits like this, I would hope that the ATS systems would catch up to some of these issues, but they're
That was
not there
my
yet.
shocker. Like, I'm like, how is it possible we don't have like a mitigation layer on this for the amount of money that people spend with talent attraction or or talent acquisition software? How is it possible we have not figured out a QC layer? Like, like it boggles my mind that we're so legacy in this regard, that
And
there's not a check.
And then I recall, like, Indeed, who is not my favorite of the vendors. Indeed wouldn't take our jobs at one point because the way that we set up our salary transparency didn't fit their formula for ingesting it. And then we had to come up with a whole workaround. And then sometimes it was showing up and sometimes it wasn't. And, then somebody complains that salary wasn't right on Indeed, even though we have it right on our career site. All sorts of issues that can go into play. And as an organization, I think this is such a fabulous idea that I can't wait for us to bring it to life. And I want to
Yeah.
hear what our friends and listeners have to say about it. If you could have a tool like this, what would you want to see besides things like spelling, grammar, salary, template structure? And I think this is one where it could be a one size fits one versus a one size fits all. You could have your custom rec check tool built for you by
Yeah. For context, what I'm calling what I built for my friend is RecCheck, which essentially is just checking your
yeah,
requisition, right? Your
I
public
love it.
requisition.
I love it.
Pretty
Hire
basic.
Jenny.
It's well, thank you, Claude, for coming up with that name. That one was not me. I appreciate Claude. It was like, "This is cute. This doesn't exist in the market. Let's go." But, I mean, there's things that you can go and to be clear, this was taking a public feed, right? There is no integration that was needed in this. This is literally being able to scrape the public feed that's going out there for your public postings and being able to index the errors and to give you essentially a map of here's what you need to improve on, right? So something like a rec check, right? You could go from zero to like we could run it on you tomorrow and you would have your list of the things that you'd need to fix, right? And so, yeah, would love to hear from the market if this is something that's interesting to you. Another thing is if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I want to do that for my organization, let us know. We'll teach you how to do it. To pay us to teach you how to do it, right? We're trying to get better at being able to monetize these things because, like have to work. But it's an
Mama's got to
exciting
pay the
time.
bills, right?
Mama's got to pay the bills for sure, for sure. But it's also like I've said this multiple times before, and maybe not on the podcast yet, but I truly believe that in 3 to 5 years, you're going to have somebody like a me on a team that's going to, their job is going to be to own the architecture, to understand the problems, to build and ship agentic experiences that are going to help your organization get this stuff right. I had an amazing dinner last night with my friend who was talking about some of the ambient AI that they put in, which is able to understand what you're doing and propose recommendations on like doing that on the automatically serving up the recommendations to the specific user groups of like, hey, it looks like this might have friction in the process. Do you want to consider doing this? Right? It's just freaking
Say, like,
brilliant.
the evolution of the TA ops role, right? I was in a TA ops role. I was a recruiter first, then in a TA ops role, and then the global leader of the function. And having that TA ops experience was so valuable to me in being a better leader because I understood how the nuts and bolts worked. In today's day and age, with agentic experiences and automation and things like that, I know more companies now have TA ops people. Having an FDE type of engineer on my team, if I were building a new function today, would be a must have requirement of my talent acquisition team structure. So it's a no brainer to, and if you can't build that type of role on your team, using someone fractionally like Jenny is like, to me, that's critical. You need those skills in order to have a successful TA function in today's world. You want to be competitive and stay competitive. This is the kind of skill that you need in your organization.
Absolutely. And if you don't have it in your organization and you want it in your organization, finding somebody like a me to be able to teach your team how to fish with this because building in people and operations and HR is different than building in the business. There are certain things from a regulatory standpoint, from a PII standpoint, from a GDPR standpoint, from all these different lenses that there's a reason why the human capital world is so much more highly regulated, right? Like we have people's private identifiable information that's accessible for us, and how we use that we have to be really careful about. So there are
Just
certain
because
things
Yep, just
just
because you can do it doesn't mean you should, right?
100%. I want to get that. I want to get that on a shirt. That's just because you can. Maybe for our September thing, we can have that as our shirts for when we're hosting a fun stage. So which we can't officially say yet, but it will be really exciting, and we're excited about it. But I think that's probably good for today. What do you think, Jules?
Yep. So
Amazing.
if you're struggling with job postings and accuracy, we'd love to hear what you're struggling with, if this kind of tool would be helpful for you. And thank you for listening to the Missing Manual.
Yeah. So until next time, I'm JCK and this is Jules, and we are so glad that you tuned in, and we will see you next time.